So hello and good morning, and good afternoon to those joining from other time zones. Welcome to today's webinar, How Analytics Teams Using SSAS Can Embrace Big Data and the Cloud. My name is Tyler Wishnoff. I'm a marketing manager for Kyligence and your moderator for today's session. I'm joined by Lee Kong, Kyligence's Senior Director of Strategic Business Development. Lee brings with him extensive experience across the analytics industry, whether that be from serving in the trenches as an engineer or working directly with organizations of all sizes to help them navigate the process of transforming their technology environments to better support next generation analytics work like big data and data science. Before we begin, a few minor housekeeping items. Today's presentation should run for about 30 to 45 minutes, with 15 minutes reserved at the end for Q&A. Please reserve all questions for the Q&A section. You may communicate those questions at any time via the Q&A function, which can be toggled with the Q&A symbol at the bottom of your screen. Lastly, this webinar is also being recorded, and you will have access to it a few days following the session. With that said, I'll pass things over to Lee to get us started. Lee, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Good morning, good afternoon. And for the attendees joining from Europe and Asia Pacific, good evening. Thank you for joining today's webinar. In the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to cover the challenges facing SSAS customers in the modern IT world. We're going to talk about how Kyligence help customers address these challenges. And then we're going to walk through two use cases. At the end, as Tyler mentioned, we're going to leave some time for Q&A. So we mentioned modern IT environment. What exactly does that mean? In a recent report, Gartner defined the critical capabilities for BI platforms in the big data era. We highlighted them in this slide. So for the context of this webinar, we're going to focus on these three challenges: data volume, data complexity, and user concurrency. We will take a look at how these challenges affect SSAS users. So enterprise customers have seen great successes with SQL Server analysis services in the past 20 years. SSAS is a complete OLAP solutions, can be used for both ROLAP and the MOLAP models. But majority of users use the MOLAP or cube technologies. Because of this pre-calculated aggregations in the multidimensional OLAP model, SSAS users can interactively analyze data set, slice and dice the data with great flexibility, and get answers at the speed of thought. SSAS integrates very well with Excel and many other BI tools. And also, it has this advanced analysis capabilities, such as calculated measures, many-to-many relationships, time intelligence. Right? As AS users, you love these capabilities. Last but not least, SSAS supports advanced interfaces such as MDX and DAX for analysis. So obviously, there are many other great features that you're familiar with. I'm not going into all the details of these features. So with all these great capabilities, let's take a look at the challenges facing SSAS today. As we mentioned earlier, modern BI platforms need to be able to handle the three challenges of big data era. First, data volume. When SSAS was first deployed about 20 years ago, 1 gigabyte was considered a large volume of data. In today's world, data lakes usually have hundreds of terabytes or even petabytes of data. It is very hard for SSAS to handle this type of data volume from both hardware and software standpoint. SSAS is built on a scale-up architecture. So if you need to handle more data volume, you need to build a bigger cube. Usually you will need to add more CPU powers and more RAM capabilities. And that soon becomes very expensive. And each cube size is limited. And some of the functions just takes a long time or can't even finish in a single server without a distributed architecture. So that's the data volume challenge. Second, data model is more complex than ever. business users are more sophisticated. They wanted to analyze across tens or hundreds of attributes in their analysis. In the OLAP world, we call them dimensions. And some of these dimensions may have very high cardinalities with millions of entries. SSAS was definitely not prepared for this kind of analysis. Third, the analytics is becoming such a key capability for the enterprise to gain a competitive advantages. It is not used by a small group of elite users anymore. In today's enterprise, you have hundreds of users, analysts, data scientists across enterprise are using the same platform, often analyzing the same set of data at the same time for different purposes, different projects, right? Being able to support this level of concurrency is critical in today's enterprise world. And finally, almost every single company is embracing cloud technology. Our OLAP solution needs to support cloud as well. Now, when we talk about cloud support, there are two aspects of this. One is to support the cloud data sources, such as cloud data stores and cloud data warehouses. Second aspect of the cloud support is to leverage the key capabilities of cloud platforms, such as elasticity, security, cost effectiveness. Unfortunately, SSAS is currently not available on any cloud platform, including Microsoft's own Azure platform. So volume, dimensions, concurrencies, cloud, these are the four challenges that maybe the top level of the challenges SSAS customers are facing today. So to address these challenges, people have been looking at different technologies, right? First, Hadoop SQL engines. There are a lot of great Hadoop SQL engines out there. SQL engine is great at providing a SQL interface to different file formats stored in Hadoop file systems. It is great for looking up certain records from millions or even trillions of records stored in your data lake. But for analytics use cases, the online calculation part of the aggregation queries usually can take a long time in SQL engine. So the query performance is the bottleneck for the SQL engines in the analytical use cases. The second technology people looked at is cloud data warehouse. Cloud data warehouse usually is the MPP engine, MPP technology, so it will suffer the same query performance issues when it comes to aggregated queries. But also, supporting concurrency is done through spinning up extra clusters while maintaining only one copy of data. So this is the so-called separation of storage and compute in the cloud data warehouse world. But since cloud data warehouse charge by the consumption of computer resources, supporting a large number of concurrent users soon become very expensive. So that's the cloud data warehouse from both query performance and the cost to support concurrency. That's how usually that will struggle with the modern analytical use cases. The third technology is data virtualization. Data virtualization is becoming very popular in the last couple of years, especially in the big data world. It's great for fast data exploration at a smaller scale, right? You connect to different sources. You don't need to build an ETL process. You build a virtual view across these different data sources in different systems. And you can start your analysis from there immediately. It's great. But when you need to join and aggregate millions of rows of data from multiple sources across the network, that's going to be very slow. And furthermore, to keep all that data in memory for multiple concurrent users, it's going to be extremely expensive. And sometimes it's just impossible to finish that kind of calculation in memory. So between Hadoop SQL engines, between cloud data warehouses and data virtualization, people try the different technologies and run into different issues with these challenges we mentioned. So let's take a look at Kyligence, the platform, what it is, and how do we do it. and how can we help SSAS customers. To talk about Kyligence, we'd have to start with an open source project called Apache Kylin. Back in 2013, we created an open source OLAP project for big data environment. The goal of this project was to create an OLAP engine that can analyze large volume of data. Often it's hundreds of terabytes or petabyte scale, millions of rows. And this engine needs to handle large number of concurrent users, usually hundreds or even more concurrent users. It needs to be able to analyze across multiple dimensions at tens of dimensions for complex analysis requirements. And even under all these conditions, the query response time should be at the second level. That was the goal for this project. And these were the exact challenges we discussed in previous section, the challenges SSAS customers are facing today. So this project was a huge success and soon became an Apache top-level project. It won 2 open source awards back in 2015 and 16. And it has been adopted by over 1,000 organizations worldwide, including some of the world's largest banks, insurance companies, manufacturers, websites, and so on. Kyligence is the company founded by the creators of Apache Kylin. The name came from Kylin plus intelligence, and I will explain a little more about the intelligence part in the following slide. Our product offering is based on the open source Apache Kylin, and we continue to lead the open source community with contributors from around the world from many different companies. So on top of this open source Apache Kylin core, we developed key components that are critical for the enterprise customers, which I will cover them in the following slides. And also for these enterprise customers, we offer support services, implementation services, and training services. We also made Kyligence available in the cloud. Remember, one of the challenges I mentioned earlier is the enable the OLAP cube analysis in the cloud environment, and SSAS is not available in the cloud. Kyligence can be deployed in the cloud natively in all the major cloud service platforms. We're a very well-funded startup. We closed a round of seed funding. Our investors are the elite Silicon Valley and Wall Street investors. And last year, we were recognized as one of the top 10 big data startups by CRM. So this is just a quick introduction, some background about Kyligence, the company. Here are some of our large enterprise customers who has been using our technologies. As I mentioned, we have over 1,000 enterprise organization worldwide has been using our technologies. Now let's take a look at the high-level architecture. As you can see from this diagram on the right-hand side, Kyligence sits in between the data sources and the data applications. SSAS only supports relational databases as sources. In Kyligence, we can read data from RDBMS, from cloud data stores like S3 or Azure Data Lake. We support Hive tables on Hadoop. We can read data from MPP data warehouses, whether they are deployed on premises or in the cloud. Another key enhancement I would like to point out is we also support Kafka for streaming data source. Now with Kafka support, you can update your cube in near real time, right? This real-time capability opens doors to many use cases, such as IoT-related scenarios. And those are impossible to implement with SSAS before. At the top, the front-end data applications can be Excel using MDX functions, which you're pretty familiar with from the SSAS world. But we also support BI applications as Power BI, Tableau, MicroStrategy, Qlik. I didn't list all of them here, but obviously you get the idea. We support all the major BI applications. and we support them through standard ANSI SQL. So you can use ANSI SQL that opens doors to any BI tools that or applications that you build in-house. And in addition to MDX and ANSI SQL, we can also receive queries through REST APIs. That gives you more flexibility to integrate other applications into Kyligence engine. So at the core, Kyligence product offering is this Apache Kylin, the open source OLAP technology I mentioned before. Kyligence can be deployed either on-premise in a data lake or in the cloud. We can leverage the scalability of this underlying architecture to build the cube from petabytes of source data, right? So there's no limit on the size of the cube that you can build. For example, we have one customer who has built a cube of 1 petabyte of size. The cube data source come from over 9 trillion rows of raw data. And for that kind of raw data and cube size, 50% of their queries finish within half second. 90% of their queries finish within 1 second. So let me repeat these numbers again. 9 trillion rows of raw data. Cube size was 1 petabyte. 50% of the queries finish within half second, and 90% of the aggregate queries come back within 1 second. That's the scale and the performance we can get from this architecture. So intelligent modeling. I mentioned this in the previous slide. Let's take a look at what this means. Traditionally, one of the roadblocks for the customers to adopt SSAS was the steep learning curve of cube modeling and designing. In Kyligence Enterprise, we built intelligent modeling capability that allows users to design and build cubes automatically based on data profile, query histories, and other metadata information. Now, obviously, you can still fine-tune the cubes in the expert mode once you got the automatic build model. But the software is smart enough to do all the work for you to get you started. That's the intelligent modeling. We also have the enterprise security built into the product. Basically, this allows you to connect to enterprise directories, authenticate user with major big data security frameworks, and control access at row and column level. On top of these core modules, we expose a semantic layer to the front-end BI tools. This semantic layer translates the technical metadata to user-friendly business metadata. It also provides advanced analytics capabilities, such as calculated measures, many-to-many relationships, and time intelligence. So these are the capabilities that you are familiar with in SSAS. You love these capabilities. We make them available in the Kyligence platform as well. So in addition to the high-level architecture, I would also like to call out some of the key enhancements in Kyligence. First is a unified query entry point. SSAS is only used for aggregated queries. Results from pre-calculated aggregations are stored in the cubes, and the query comes in through SSAS user interface from the client, will hit the cube, and then the result is sent back to the client. With Kyligence, majority of the queries will still be aggregated queries, and they will be served from the cube. So that's the aggregated queries. But we also index the detailed records, your transaction details. We can build index and store them locally in the Kyligence platform. Queries for these detailed records will be routed to the local index for better performance. And then in addition to the aggregate query and detailed query, there are always ad hoc queries that are not pre-calculated in the cubes or not calculated yet. In this case, Kyligence Enterprise can intelligently route these queries to the data sources So that will leverage your query engines, and it will calculate the results and send the results back to the client. So with this intelligent routing capability, Kyligence basically can be the single query entry point for all kinds of query requirements. Users don't need to switch between different tools for different queries. Enterprise-grade security. We talked about this in the previous slide as well, so just want to list some of the details here, right? SSAS support cube level and record level security. There's no project or column level permissions. In Kyligence, we have a granular security control down to the cell level. You can do both row and column level, and also we support project table level security access control. It integrates with enterprise directories, both on-premise and in the cloud. It also supports big data security frameworks, so you can use that to authenticate users. So that's the enterprise-grade security. Next, the integration with BI products is even easier in Kyligence, right? Literally 3 steps. We have built certified connectors with the popular BI products. So these connectors are jointly developed by Kyligence and the BI vendors. They are pre-built, they're certified. So we can automatically synchronize Kyligence cubes into the BI products and define measurements and the many-to-many relationships, those analysis in the semantic layer I mentioned earlier. So since it's defined in the semantic layer and exposed to the BI tools, you don't have to re-implement that in different BI products. You can just point different BI tools that your favorite BI products to our cubes and gain access to this advanced analytics capabilities. And finally, because of the performance of Kyligence cubes, you can use BI tools or Excel pivot tables interactively analyze data, get insights quickly through the BI tool. So literally 3 steps: sync cubes, define semantic layer, and then start analyzing. Much easier than before. So to summarize what we discussed in this section, let's compare Kyligence with SSAS at the architecture level. First of all, data source. In addition to the relational data sources, Kyligence supports modern data sources such as Hadoop, cloud, Kafka streaming sources. It is built on a distributed compute and storage platform, leverages the scale-out architecture with commodity hardware, either on premises or in the cloud. Kyligence cube size can be at a petabyte scale, so there's no limit of the cube size. You don't have to worry about how much memory you have on a single server, because we can distribute this on the Hadoop or cloud storage platform. Kyligence cube building is based on Apache Spark framework, which is a high-performance distributed compute framework. So users can finish initial cube building and incremental cube refresh quickly to meet all the SLA requirements. And these cubes, as I mentioned, can be hundreds of terabytes or petabyte scale, and we can still finish it up very quickly. I'm going to share some number with you in the case study section. But I also want to point out is, even Kyligence use Apache Spark behind the scene. For the end users or developers or cube builders or business users, they don't need to worry about writing Spark code. All this complexity is under the hood, behind the scene. End users don't need to write any single line of code for this cube building or query, cube building or cube updating operations. With Kyligence, because of the intelligent query routing I mentioned earlier, right? We support ad hoc analysis. We support very flexible queries. And also, you can have all your analysis users across enterprise slice and dice the data any way they want, ask different questions, get answers instantaneously. So that greatly improves their productivities across the whole organization. You don't have to wait for your allocated time slot. You don't have to figure out which server is available to you, and you don't have to worry about, your job may take over all the memories of the server, and other people cannot run their query. So all these pain points are gone now. And finally, with enhanced security, Kyligence is ready to be deployed in the production environment at enterprise level. So this is an architectural comparison at high level between SSAS and Kyligence Enterprise, and also the Kyligence Cloud, obviously. This table lists some of the detailed features, comparisons. I'm not going to go through this list. It will be available as part of the slide deck. Tyler mentioned we're going to share this with you after the webinar. So at that time, you can go through the details. And if you have any question, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to explain to you in more details. So we talked about Kyligence, the company, Apache Kylin, the project, the product offering, key features, architecture, and how it compares against SSAS. Now, let's take a look at two case studies. The first case study is about a global fast food chain. They have tens of thousands of restaurants worldwide. Their analytics platform was running on Greenplum Data Warehouse, Microsoft SSAS, and the front end is Excel and Tableau. It's very common in a lot of enterprises. And they are experiencing rapid business growth in the last several years. Between opening new stores, added product offerings, and probably most importantly is the digital channels, online orders, mobile orders, and also applications from third-party digital channels, right? So SSAS has become a bottleneck in this analytics flow. It can't handle the growing data volume. Cubes takes too long to build, and they're missing their SLAs, and daily or weekly refresh of the cube takes too long. Some queries take tens of minutes or even hours to finish, so they can't even do the interactive analysis. They can't drill into their dashboards, and they can't make decisions fast enough. So they need a solution that can support the growth, but also can leverage their technical skills and the cube concept that they love. The challenge that they're facing is with so many product offerings, geographical locations, and the marketing channels, their requirements can be quite complex, and it changes very quickly. With the marketing events, different promotions they're running, they need to monitor the customers' responses and make changes accordingly, immediately. So they need to support this fast interactive analysis, and they need the business users don't have time to learn a new set of BI tools. So Excel support is critical. Tableau support is critical. And the less impact or change on the business user side, the better. So the solutions we deployed is Kyligence Enterprise as an intelligent data warehouse on premises. So this Kyligence platform is deployed on their Cloudera Hadoop platform. Cloudera Hadoop is their big data lake, right? Kyligence expose semantic layer that connects to existing Excel and Tableau front end. So business users don't need to learn a new BI tool. And with Kyligence, they can build cubes and handle all their transaction data, and also provide high availability and high concurrency for all the business users to slice and dice the data. So obviously the value added to this customer, timely and accurately monitoring store operations, the one-stop decision-making support systems. Because of enterprise security built into the Kyligence, they can much better manage the data access across all the users. And they're still using the cubing technology that they are familiar with and love. So just to share some numbers with you. I mentioned earlier, right? Some of the queries can take tens of minutes to finish. With Kyligence, 80% of aggregate queries finish in 1 second. Now, another interesting result is there's a function called count distinct. Some of them you guys may be familiar with. Count distinct is a critical function for consumer behavior analysis and a lot of other online analysis or retail type of analytics requirements. It is very hard to implement count distinct for large data sets. That's why some products chose to do estimate count instead of accurate count distinct. But rough estimate or even close, maybe close enough, but usually it's not good enough for accurate, timely business decision making. SSAS really struggles with count distinct at this level. It's not like how long it takes to finish. They can't even finish this function at this hundreds of million rows, actually 30 billion record level, right? With Kyligence, count distinct function literally finish in less than 10 seconds. And keep in mind that the data set we're talking about here is 30 billion records of raw data and 50 million records in new data get ingested every day. And that the result is sub-second query latency for 80% of the queries, and count distinct functions finish in less than 10 seconds. Another use case I want to share with you is about a global investment bank. They have billions of rows of historical data to support risk analysis project. And they deployed probably one of the largest SSAS environments. They built many cubes. Obviously, fast response time is critical to make timely decisions in the risk analysis world. And another requirement of this customer is their enterprise is moving to the cloud. In this case, it's Microsoft Azure. And as I mentioned earlier, SSAS is not available in Microsoft Azure. So the challenge they're facing is scale up architecture of SSAS cannot support this data volume. It just becomes too expensive, and also the performance is a big challenge. Too many cubes to manage due to the size limit of each cube, and cube loading and query takes too much time. So the solution for this client is Kyligence in the cloud. Kyligence Cloud multidimensional analysis deployed on Azure platform in this case. We run a test for this customer I'm going to share the data with you in the next slide. But this solution integrates very well with their Excel and other existing BI tools. And we leverage the cloud elasticity to support high performance query, but still keep the total cost of ownership down. So with this platform, they can better support the risk analysis, make a better decision in a timely manner, reduce the total cost of ownership, and increase stability and high availability. So let's take a look at their numbers. So their raw data is 350 billion rows of record. These are different transaction records from different systems they collected. They need to support 100 concurrent users. That's the workload we're dealing with. Total cost in the cloud environment is at about $300 dollar a day in terms of a cloud infrastructure cost. And that translates to about $9,000 a month to support this type of data volume and analysis, right? Easy to maintain. They need to analyze across over 1,200 dimensions. For this kind of requirements, we built one cube. So this one cube, the IT department only need to manage the job to build and update this one cube. And this one cube not only handle all these the raw data, like 350 billion rows of raw data, and it exposes 1,200 plus dimensions for all kinds of use cases and scenarios. Faster cube building. Every day they have 8 billion of new records get ingested into their data lake. And we were able to update the cube accordingly in less than an hour. So they have plenty of time to update the cube and to make it available to the busy users. So that's the test result we got for this global investment bank. So we shared two use cases here, and obviously not every customer is operating at this scale, right? Not all of them have 350 billion rows and have 100 concurrent users or over 1,000 dimensions. But even you're working at hundreds of gigabytes or terabytes level, you're still going to see the performance impact to the SSAS environment. And if you're moving to the cloud, you'll find that there's no SSAS service in the Azure, in any cloud platform, right? Microsoft Azure has this AAS concept, Azure Analysis Service, which is more equivalent to the OLAP or tabular model in SSAS. It's not a cube model. So there's no cubing capabilities natively in Azure. And if you have customers need to support maybe 20, 30 dimensions, 50, 60 concurrent users, you're going to run into similar performance issues or cost issues. So this is where we can help. Oh, by the way, for this global investment bank, 90% of their SQL queries finish within 5 seconds. So we talked about challenges facing SSAS. We talked about Kyligence, the data analysis platform, its architecture, its key features, and we walked through 2 case studies. That concludes my portion of this presentation. Now I'm going to hand it back to Tyler for any questions.
Thank you, Lee. And now I'd like to open the floor to questions. Remember, you can submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of the webinar interface. So we already actually have a few questions, so let's just jump right into it. Lee, here's a question that came up earlier. Is all functionality of the cube available in BI tools regardless of the connection?
Yes. Simple answer, yes.
Okay, great. Great. And another one we got is Kyligence available on-prem or is it available in the cloud as well?
Yes, you can deploy it on-premise, and it also is available on all the major cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, and Google.
Okay, okay, great. Actually, we've got a couple of similar ones. One that just came in, is there going to be a demo of the cube modeling tools or the developer environment, or is there a demo perhaps available? And another question we got are evaluations available for Kyligence? So similar questions.
Yeah, due to the time constraint of this webinar, we're not going to do a demo in this webinar, but we do have several tutorials in the video format on our website. And there's a evaluation available on the cloud marketplaces, Azure, AWS, and also if you reach out to us, we'll be happy to work with you to provide you an evaluation license. But as long as we understand your requirements and see if it's a good fit.
Mm-hmm. And we actually got a follow-up from the earlier questions regarding the functionality of Cube with BI tools. Does that also extend to many-to-many relationships in SQL?
Yes. I mentioned that in the presentation as well.
Oh,
that's the semantic layer in the Kyligence environment.
Mm-hmm. We got a question about slides and availability. We will be following up after this webinar. Probably it'll take a couple of days to get everything together, but we'll be sending out the slides as well as a direct link to the recording so people can review this afterwards at their leisure. Let's see. We got a question if you're able to show us the data modeling UI.
As I mentioned, due to the time constraint, we don't have a demo environment for this webinar, or we're not going to show the demo in the webinar. We'll be happy to share links to the video tutorial, which you can see what the UI looks like and how do we build models and how do we run the queries and how do we integrate with BI products. So they're all available on our website. I'll be happy to share that with you, with all the attendees.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll be sure to include that in the follow-up email following this webinar to help make sure everyone can get access to the information they're looking for. Question about, what is Kyligence's pricing model?
The pricing model is a subscription model based on the data volume. So for data volume, I mean the data that you use to ingest into the cube building process to build the cubes. So basically, depends on the data volume to build the cube, and a subscription on a yearly base. That's our pricing model.
Right. Just more questions we got. Is the aggregation materialized or happens on runtime?
The aggregation is materialized, if you will. Right? Our cubes are stored in the distributed architecture in the file systems, so that it's not limited by the memory size, and it's not a runtime calculation.
Okay, great. Oh, here's another follow-up. Why do you not support MDX with Power BI to provide a list of dimensions and measures rather than dealing with SQL code?
We support both SQL and MDX.
Here's one. We have a lot of sensitive data. How does my data become available to Kyligence? Does any of it become available to Kyligence?
We don't store your raw data. So if you're concerned about PII, that kind of information, we calculate the aggregations and we only store the aggregations. And in that case, so you don't have to worry about the PII or security concerns or leaks. So actually, one of the customers use us to move the aggregated results across regions, right? Because by law, you have to keep the transactional data in your local country data center. You cannot move them across the border. But for the aggregated results, you can easily move them around for analytics purposes. So that's a great feature for the global enterprises. Okay, great. So we're almost out of time. We've got time, I think, for one more question. And if we weren't able to get to your question, we'll follow up directly via email. So we'll make sure you get an answer. So the last question is, do you have to have the source on HDFS to add it to the cube? No, not necessarily, right? As I mentioned earlier, we have sources from relational databases, from Hadoop, but also from data warehouses or the cloud object stores, and even Kafka streaming sources. Okay, great. All right, well, that is all the time we have today. Thank you again, Lee, for sharing your insights with us. And an extra special thank you to everyone who attended today's session.
We hope you got a lot out of it, and we look forward to having you at our next webinar. If you're interested in learning more about Kyligence and how we can help analytics teams using SSAS embrace big data, or just like to reach out, visit our website at www.kyligence.io. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Kyligence and on LinkedIn. Thanks again for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your day.